Mars, our dormant neighbour, which has been sparking the imagination of sci-fi writers and conspiracy theorists alike for generations. The thought, the near certainty that there is life in the universe out there somewhere is both fascinating and frightening, and some believe that the ever-elusive alien life we seek could be much closer than expected. Recent exploration of the red planet shows that the surface is dead. However, there is some evidence to suggest that there at least used to be life on Mars many thousands of years ago. Mars was once much more habitable than it is today, with evidence suggesting that Mars once had an atmosphere similar to Earth's and liquid water on its surface. The field of astronomy still rejects the idea that there were once complex life forms living on Mars, but the glimmer of hope offered by NASA's findings has sparked several conspiracy theories. Thanks to the internet and images from orbiting probes, we now feel closer to the red planet than ever before, with potentially artificial objects being spotted on Mars, including today's subjects, the Towers of Mars, which only became a main area for discussion as recently as 2016. Through orbiting probes and satellite images available via Google Mars, conspiracy theorists believe that they have found 3 artificially constructed mile-high towers on the planet's surface. These towers can be found in the unexplored Terra Meridiani region of the planet and are organised in a perfect straight line. The images were originally circulated on YouTube with a CGI 3D interpretation of what the towers might look like from ground level. Conspiracy theorists argue that the towers are too similar and too well aligned for them to have been caused by a natural phenomena, leading to the explanation that these towers are evidence of an extinct ancient civilization. To make things even more interesting, NASA has officially acknowledged that these towers do exist. Although there are countless conspiracies about life on Mars as well as its demise, evidence to support these claims is quite thin on the ground, but there are still a few theories that have enough going for them to be worth mentioning here. First of all, there is distinct evidence to suggest that there was water on Mars at some point. This helps the claims of life on the planet massively because, as we know, water is an essential ingredient for sustaining life. We know there was water on Mars thousands, perhaps even millions of years ago, because probes sent to the planet have found traces of bacteria in the surface soil, which is only present in water. On top of this, there is a huge amount of ice on the surface of Mars, and even traces of liquid vapour still present in the planet's atmosphere. However, NASA scientists have said that the former presence of water does not prove the presence of life. After analysing the water traces, some NASA scientists believe that the water would have been too salty and acidic to support life. But the idea of water being too acidic to support life is dubious at best. Recent discoveries of acidophilic bacteria on Earth counter the idea that life cannot survive in highly acidic environments. One particular breed of bacteria called Ferroplasma was found growing in Iron Mountain, California, in an acid drainage system in pH 0 conditions. This shows us that life can in fact survive in highly acidic conditions, and the high acidity of Martian waters would not necessarily stop life from existing in it. Staying on the subject of Martian water, the discovery of underground saltwater lakes in the Martian South Pole in 2020 reinvigorated Mars's claim for life. Following 134 observations of the planet in a 7-year window by the European Space Agency, scientists were able to confirm the existence of 3 liquid saltwater lakes under the surface of Mars, despite conventional science at the time stating the existence of water on Mars was impossible in its current condition. Jonathan O'Callaghan, a scientist involved with the project, said the following when talking about the discovery of the lakes. Scientists have long thought that there could be water trapped under Mars' surface, perhaps a remnant of when the planet once had seas and lakes billions of years ago. If such reservoirs exist, there could be potential habitats for Martian life. So it isn't actually too left field to believe that there not only used to be life on Mars, that there in fact could still be life on Mars to this very day. Why am I bringing this all up, I hear you ask? Well, there's no point me trying to prove that there's artificial structures on Mars if it was impossible for anything to be there and build them in the first place. But even if it is there, underground saltwater bacteria can't build 3 separate mile-high towers, so where could they have come from? Conspiracy theorist Scott C. Waring believes that There is a whole planet full of buildings and artifacts to be discovered on Mars. They all look like they were made well because none of them are destroyed. They would be a perfect place for setting up human Mars base, if they are empty, of course. In spite of all this, all the potential for life doesn't necessarily mean that there is or even was life on Mars, and most Martian life revelations are generally short-lived before getting debunked. A key example of this was the face of Mars, which was spotted by the Viking 1 mission in 1976. But as higher resolution pictures are taken of this seemingly artificial structure, the truth became much less spectacular. Skeptics argue that much like the face of Mars, the towers of Mars are just a case of apophenia, a term used to describe the mind's tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things, like we see shapes in clouds or faces in a piece of toast. But I digress. As it turns out, there could be a simple natural explanation for the towers. NASA officially recognises the towers' existence, so we know that the pictures aren't faked. But they have undisputedly rejected the CGI 3D rendering of the towers, saying they are most likely misidentified dust columns. Mars is known to have extreme dust storms across its surface, and NASA say that these so-called structures are just an accumulation of dust particles despite their size and alignment. There are other examples of dust towers on Mars which are whipped up by storms, with some having reached several miles high in the past. Mars can suffer colossal global-wide dust storms roughly once a decade, and NASA argues that the towers of Mars are merely remnants from one of these storms. Adding to the doubt is NASA and the European Space Agency's disinterest in searching the Terra Meridiani region. To date, no rover has ever been sent to the region, and these obscure satellite images are all we have of the towers. You could argue that this shows they're nothing special, as if they were, surely NASA would be more interested in them. Alternatively, this could also be used as evidence to say that they are something interesting and NASA is just trying to keep it quiet. Although apophenia is the most likely explanation, all hope is not lost for believers until NASA gets over to the towers and proves that they are natural structures once and for all. That we know of, it is impossible for life forms to exist on the surface of Mars in its current condition, as we've already discussed, but there is an extremely slim possibility of life existing in Mars's underground saltwater lakes. Until we can get a probe out to Mars to search these lakes and explore the Terra Meridiani region up close, we will just have to keep wondering and waiting for the day when space finally shows us that we are truly not alone.